Okay, let's see what we can actually hack from this website. Now that we've worked out how a query should be structured, we can now do some more detailed things. Look, we can find out who we're logged into the database as with this SQL. Let me just tell you about the SQLs to start with. So we've completed the original select. We're using C language comments to masquerade as spaces. We're doing a union and we're doing a select. All of these are dummy columns to get the SQL to actually work, except this column, user. So we fill in this column after the date for what we want. So currently we can get back one record. We could probably get back more than one record by using the next one as well. And then we put our where clause in here. So from Dual in this particular case. And then we can modify that to do other things. So if we just run that, put that in the search box, we can find out we're logged in as a user, Oracle user called Orablog. We could then find out what version of Oracle it is. So it's 11.204. It doesn't say Enterprise Edition, doesn't say XE, so it doesn't say Personal, so it must be Standard Edition. And again, we put in what we want, the banner from the select, and then on the end, you put in the from part, so from VDOLA version. And then you can just modify this, so we can find out what enabled options are valid. So you can find out which component. None of this comes back in order. If you try and put an order by on, then it fails. So you can see what's enabled. You can find out if auditing is enabled, any cost options are enabled, etc. The next thing to do is we could list out all of the users. So we can get the users in the database, we can see which default users are existing, we can find out what users the customers created, and so on. So we can find out DBA accounts, developer accounts, we can see Apex is installed, and so on. What we can also do is look for code in the database, look for PLSQL. So this gives us the names of procedures, and again it's the same as before. Select what you want, the object name, and the where clause, and the from and the where clause from user objects, and you can have a where clause on the end as well if you want. So there's one in here that I've already seen that's interesting, called Run SQL. We can find out what the source code of Run SQL is. So that's the second one here. This gives you the source code, but it's in the wrong order, but it doesn't matter. So you can see it's auth ID current user, so it's running as the caller, it's doing dynamic SQL, so it's just executing anything that you give it, and you can see the PV is passed in and there is no filtering, so anything you pass in just gets passed to the execute immediate. So dangerous. We can also find out the code of the encryption routines, so a little bit of searching that I've done earlier will tell me that it's this procedure here. This is doing the encryption and decryption of credit card details in the database, and the key is passed to another procedure called BOF-KKR. This is just a CHR, this just means .key if you go and translate this back out in the database. So we need to know what that is. So BOF-KKR is getting the key from the operating system, so we can get the source code of that. And you can see that it just uses a directory object and reads the key from the file name that's passed in, if we can find the front of the procedure. So K is passed in, K is passed into the read line somewhere there, and it reads the key. So we could just execute that and get the key. That's the encryption key that is retrieved from the file system stored in a file.key that's accessible through a directory object called Orablog. And obviously with all that information we could get credit card details decrypted, but we don't need to do that. We can just simply use the procedure BOFK-KRC to decrypt them. So we've decrypted the 2 credit card numbers that we could see earlier in the customer internal application, which is in here. The same 2 customers, the same 2 credit card numbers. You could go much further. You could actually go in and you could change the Orablog user's password, or you could disable auditing on the credit card table, or you could disable auditing on the internal Orablog users table or on the cryptography package. So we could turn off auditing on the credit card table. You don't see anything except what it executed. So this is actually much more complex. So this is actually calling run SQL in the select position where the column was used previously, like username or banner that we saw earlier, and then it's executing dynamic DDL to do a no audit on the credit card table. How do you know what the credit card table is called? Well, you can get a list of tables from the database. We should have done that first. So you can see here, list of tables, credit card table. We could also change the Orablog user's password. So the Orablog user's password is currently Orablog, but we can change it by going to the logon screen. Just putting anything in there like X, doesn't matter. Nothing came back as an error. That means it actually worked. And if you go to the virtual machine itself, try and log in as Orablog/Orablog. That gives us a 1017 error, so it proves that it worked. So that just demonstrates some of the things you could do in hacking this website.